David Knowles, as you all know, is just an epitome of intelligence and education in this area. Sorry, remember you're deaf. And so, he's going to talk today about the class of 1943, of which he was our participant, and maybe how things were during World War II, when everybody else was in high school or off at the Army and Navy, etc. So, without further ado, David Knowles.
I suppose I should say, is anybody here from the class of 43? Raise your hand if you're. Oh, May, how about that? And there is, who is that? That's Sweetheart Bryant. Yeah.
First girlfriend.
She fell in love with this guy from Alexandria, Missouri, married him, and he always got the prize for coming the longest distance. And when they would say, well, where did you come from? And he'd say, from LA. And we assumed he was talking about California, and he was talking about Alexandria. Anyway, but that was okay. You remember that.
Husband said he came the longest distance from LA.
Oh yeah, Laura Alexandria.
Lower Alexandria.
We're going to talk a little bit about the school primarily. I wonder if you remember. No, you don't. May does. May probably went to Charleston, and didn't you?
Grade school.
Grade school, yes. But theoretically, you know, the class of 43 was made up of students from Torrance School, Jefferson School, Garfield School, Lincoln School, and Wells Carey. Now, I went to Wells Carey, and they didn't have a name for the kind of people that was going to be going to that school, so they just called it Wells Carey. That's a joke.
Oh,
okay. And the system then was a 6-3-3 here in Keokuk. I had kindergarten. I was one of the first students in the kindergarten class at Wells Carey. I'd like to say about Mr. Harold Riley. He's a former student, and he's gone, but he's probably turning his grade because he knows what I'm going to say. He started out, and then he didn't make it for most of the year, and then they brought him back in, and he came in, and they set him at my table. And so we became good friends with Harold, and then for the next 12 years, Harold and I were classmates. And so I always introduced Harold. I said, now this is Harold Riley, a good friend of mine. Now he flunked sandbox. and then they put him in with me, and I said, I carried him all the way through. And if you've ever heard or talked to Harold, he swears a little bit. And he said, that's not true. That's not true. So anyway, I'm going to talk about the Wells Carey schools. Each one of us had a principal, and Wells Carey, Jefferson, Lincoln, we all had baseball teams, we all had basketball teams, we all had swimming, and track from the grade school. And we competed, and we didn't like anybody from Torrance or Jefferson or Garfield. I mean, they were foes. They were kind of like, Parsons Fairfield used to be, Mount Pleasant used to be, and Fort Madison used to be, still is maybe, I guess. Then we finished 6th grade, no graduation in 6th grade. We went to junior high, and junior high at that time was 7, 8, and 9. And I'm not sure anybody other than May remembers that when the high school was only a 3-year high. It was sophomore, juniors, and seniors out on 15th and Main Street. Then no graduation. When we got through the 7th and the 8th and the 9th grades, then we just matriculated there, up the river, or up the road 10 blocks, and we were at the high school. And then, so that, you know, never in a situation like that where you're ever the top dog. Used to be, you know, that you would the top guy in the grade school, the top guy in the junior high, and the top guy in the high school. But it didn't work out for us because there were always guys who were top dog, and they were coming back for second classes, second things. So anyway, we seem to have an awful lot of camaraderie. And the reason that we had the camaraderie was that somebody had this bright idea that the students should be separated. That this class is in the junior high, and we should take all the A's and put them in this box, and all the B's and all the C's. And then they would take it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so that a group out there may have been 4 or 5 A's in this one class, but the next year they were in different classes because they wanted them all to be changed. And each of us got to know better all the kids that we didn't know before. And it worked out really well. And as a school superintendent, by the way, I was a school superintendent, and Harry McPhail was my principal in grade school. Chal McCoy was my principal in junior high, and Pop Lawford was my principal in high school. And all 3 of those guys would have bet you $10 that I'd never make it past before Madison Penitentiary. But then I really wasn't that bad, but I did have my problems. And then the school for us, you know, was the central portion for us. We had dances at the YMCA, at the YWCA, at the Unitarian Church. They've demolished the Unitarian Church, and my goodness, I mean, we had our best times at the Unitarian Church. Once in a while, you'd have a fight down there. There would be 2 fellas who liked the same girl, and so they would get into it if this fella got to bring the girl to the dance rather than this other one. But it was a good thing, and education in Keokuk, to my knowledge, was excellent. I just think that we, and I can remember every teacher that I had. My kindergarten teacher, my 1st grade teacher, my 3rd grade teacher, my 4th grade teacher. Every teacher that I had, I can remember. And I can remember things that, if you ever hear this music, with Miss Bindle taught music in 7th grade, and she had these records, and they were records that we didn't listen to. I mean, you know, but then we had to listen to them because, you know, we would lay down our head on the desk, and she would put a record on, and we'd play it, and she would tell us what it was and explain it to us, and it was a real experience for me because coming from South 6th Street, you know, we didn't even have a Victrola that would wind up, so it was a experience for me that was excellent, and at that point in time, we were in good shape. Now I'm going to talk to you about some people that are survivors. I'm one of them. Bernie Eyman is one of them. Anyone know Bernie Eyman? Golly. I bet you if I said anyone know Dave Knowles, hardly anybody would say I know him too. Thelma Reed Bryant. She's a survivor. Norma Renard Kay,
Poor people.
Rosalie Lancaster Pilkington, Ruby B.M. Corsican, Biannis Murray, Alice Betts Peel. And Alice Betts Peel is the only one left who has a husband yet. All the rest of the people were without our wives or husbands. Betty Trimble Dannon, Lucille Vittstead McPherson, and Helen Miller Hornis. Then I have four classmates that I can't locate. And we have been trying to locate them since our 40th reunion, but we can't locate them. Doris Bird, Leo Chance, Bill Odell, and Kathleen Wilkerson. And if any of you know where those folks might be, or if they in fact have died.
Doris Bird. I think Doris Bird has died.
Oh, has she?
I think so. I'll have to check.
Yeah. Well, she lived out, she was out east, didn't she? And she taught school.
Okay, then maybe I'm wrong.
Well, anyway, that's the one that I am interested in right now. But the Warriors were,
That's quite a few from that old people.
gonna have to. World War II was a problem for the class of 43 because, you know, in 1941 we were 8th graders, I think, maybe freshmen, but 42 and then 43, then 44. And 2 years before, you know, we were 43, we were in this war, and everything was rationed. Do you recall rationing? Anybody? I had a 1926 Studebaker, but I couldn't buy tires for it because they didn't make them. So if you're familiar with the 14th Street dump, why, we used to go out there and we'd dig through that dump looking for tires. We'd find one or two, and if we found one that looked like it was fixable, then we'd drag it home. And if you ever had an old bicycle that you had the rubber bands you put on the thing and you push it through this is before we had inner tubes in a bicycle, through there, and then you'd let it go and those rubber bands would snap back into place, and then we'd set them on fire and they'd burn down even with the tread, which very little tread left on them. And then we would paint those things with the shellac, and hopefully it would run for a while. Sometimes I would have a flat tire on 10th and Main. Once I had a wheel come off on 10th and Main, but then those were the good old days when everybody had gas stamps. They couldn't get they couldn't go and buy gas like we can today. We had to use gas stamps. My dad had the gas stamps. Do you think he was sharing? No, I don't think so. And then all the other fellas. And so even though I had a car, I walked to school my junior and senior year. Then the rationing was butter. And then somebody invented oleo. You remember when they invented oleo? And oleo was white. And then you would take the oleo and you'd get it out of there and thaw it a little bit, and there was a little pill that you would mash and into this oleo, and then you would mix it up, and it looked just like butter. And then you would pat it together and put it in the cardboard box that it came in, and it looked like a pound of butter, only it's a pound of oleo, and hardly anybody knew, you know, that. I think that's true, but then it was something that we had. Oil, gas, nylon hose. If your grandmother has ever talked to you about nylon hose, I mean, that was a big deal. They couldn't get nylon because all the nylon was going into parachutes and other kinds of war efforts. iron, steel. All of that was going into so that we back here in the home was building ships. And that's when our parents, your mother and dad, I don't know whether you remember grandma working, leaving the house and working. You know, grandma was always a homemaker, and mother was usually, my mother was a homemaker. And that was her job. She was there and she did this. But then they were drafting all of the able-bodied fellows to be a part of the war effort, and away they would go, and then industry would have nobody to so they would call for help, and the women started going out here and here. And the one thing that was probably detrimental to that is that the families moved from Hancock County, from Lee County, from Clark County. They moved where the jobs were, and they got good jobs, and they got good pay, and they got good fringe benefits, and here we are. This is what we have, and this is where we stay. So, thank you.
You're welcome.
But the thing is that a lot of our schoolmates moved. Their families took them away, and they finished up in California, finished up in Michigan, finished up in Florida, finished up wherever there was a job. They would go and they would find it. And then Michigan Ottumwa and Burlington got the ordnance plant, and Ottumwa got the seaplane base, that air base there, and they moved in people like you can't believe, and then soldiers and whatnot, and consequently they were really tough to play. I mean, I looked at the scoreboards in some of the comments that I had, and we got beat 42-0, 36-0, 17-0, and then we played somebody, I don't know, I can't remember now who it was. I think it was Montrose maybe, and we won that game. But at any rate, you know, it was one of those things that just absolutely blistered you, and you couldn't understand why. But that was the change, and I fully expected. And of course, when I grew up, Billy Timmerman, I don't know whether you know Billy Timmerman or not, but Billy Timmerman was a lawyer, and he lived just across the street, up a half a block from me, and he was a good friend of mine, and I would meet him at the railroad tracks on 6th and Johnson, and I'd walk with him up to his house, and we would talk about law and all that good stuff. And then Billy kind of took an interest. He said, "Why don't you stop by, and I'll give you some stuff to read." So anyway, I stopped by, and Billy was a little elderly fellow, but he liked me, and he would give me a book, and it on tort immunity, or it was on theft, or it was on divorce, or it was on something. And he said, "You read this, and then I'll question you on it." And I'd say, "Okay." So I'd read it, and then we'd walk home while he'd question me on it a little bit. And so I really thought that I'm going to be an attorney. Didn't happen. I had no clue as to what our requirements were to become an attorney. I didn't know you had to go to college and you had to do this and I guess I knew it, but I didn't. I thought I could do it the other way. And the situation was that Billy said, "You know, you're going to have to do something, but right now you're going to have to think about what you're going to do in the very future." He said, "You're going to have a draft ahead of you." He said, "You're 16, and when you're 18, you're going to have to sign up for the draft." Well, we did, and I just kind of lost track of Billy Timmerman, and I thoughts about being an attorney. And when I got back, I looked at what my situation was. I graduated, and I got no F's. I got no D's, whole lot of C's, and few B's, no A's. And I mean, I was in the middle groove, but you know, colleges aren't looking for guys in the middle groove. They're looking for producers and that sort of thing. And so I applied for colleges, and I wasn't too happy with it. But this was because I was not going to go to the service. I was going to be in college. That was the way. And instead of going to college, why I went to the service and Navy. I was in PT boats. I don't know whether you were familiar with PT boats, but those were wonderful things. And I know my mother didn't want me to be a submarine sailor because they went underwater and they were dangerous and they were this and that. And then I said, well, how about PT boats? Well, what are they? And I said, they're just little boats. And she said, they don't go underwater. Well, then that'd be okay. So then I did. I signed up and I became a quartermaster, and I was assigned to the PT fleet in South Pacific. And then my father made a mistake, and he took my mother to They Were Expendable with John F. Kennedy, you know. And mother said, is that a PT boat? And Grandpa said, yeah, that's what it is. Says, I would never have allowed that. Too late, Mom, too late. So anyway, those are the things that happen. You wonder what happens in school. You remember how often we went to prom and then went to cross the river to the, I think it was maybe Lakeview.
Lakeview Club.
And everybody went out there, and all the girls, you know, they had their bathing suits on, they had their blankets, and they laid down. They all went to sleep because they'd been up all night. And the fellows swam and did all the other things, but then we all got sick just about from too much, I guess it was too much sun. I'm going to say that. You know, tongue in cheek. But anyway, it worked out well, and one of the other detriments of the draft was that I had a date for prom, and the girl I had a date with I thought very much of, but she was not sold on me. But you know, when there's nobody else around, you know, Dave's okay. And so then what happened was that about 3 or 4 days or 5 maybe before prom, well, I got a call from this young lady, and she says, Dave, you know, said, I hate to tell you this, but she says, you know how long I've gone with Jake. Yeah, I know how long you've gone with Jake. Well, he's on leave, and he's come home, and he says he'll take me to prom. And I said, what am I going to do? And she says, well, you're not going to take me to prom. I guess that's it, Dave. And I said, well, I'm sorry. So if you're familiar with services and Dear John letters, I was one of the first ones to get a Dear John phone call. Anyway, it worked out fine. My mother, I went home and told my mother that, you know, that I wasn't having a date for prom. She said, yes, you have. And I said, well, what do you mean? Well, she says that the young lady next door, we had a double house and rented that half to this family. And her mother and my mother were talking out in the porch swing, and said that she's awfully upset because she didn't have a date. She says, now you can do her a big favor and do yourself a big favor. And I said, well, you know, I'm really second choice. I mean, you know, I don't. And she said, well, she hasn't been asked, so maybe it'll work out. And it did work out. I did take her to prom and had a nice time, and everything was good. So there's some detriments, and but those were the big problems that I had, or most of the people like me had in high school during the war years. I mean, there was so much fluctuation going on, and no one really knew what was happening. We got these terror. Of course, there was no TV or none of that stuff that we had in Vietnam and Korea, but we did have the problems with go to the movie and you'd see these terrible RKO films, and just what a tough time it was. And so anyway, I think that the war probably affected us more than it did than we realized at that particular time. It wound up being a real troubling time for those of us who were. And I left in a draft of 52 people, 52 kids out of Lee County. Went down, got on a train, and they took us to Des Moines, and we went through our physicals and that sort of thing, and we all had an idea of what we wanted to do or where we wanted to go. And I said Navy, and some other guy said Army, and other guy said Air Force, and another guy said such and such, so and so. And he says, okay, and now this is the way it's going to be. Who wants to be in the Marine Corps? All three guys held their hands up, and the guy says, all right, you two step out. They stepped out, and then he says, you and you and you, you're in the Marine Corps too. Step out. And the way they went, I mean, they didn't have a choice. They went to the Marine Corps. Then who wants to be in the Navy? And raised their hands. And you and you and you and you and you and you. And he said, sorry, you three, we don't have room for you. So all of us that asked to go to the Navy weren't allowed to go to the Navy. Then the Air Force was kind of the same way. And then it got to the Army, and here was this group here, and all of them had choices, and none of them had wanted to be a infantryman, I don't think. But they said, all right, now all the rest of you guys are going to be in the Army. And so we were checked over to Navy swore me in, the Army took the rest of the draft, and it worked out fine, I guess, because Tommy Worcester. Now Tommy Worcester died, and none of you, I'm not sure any of you know Tommy. You might, may, but Tommy was a bright young man, excellent student, and a good athlete, and he signed up for the Navy Air Corps. He was accepted, and he went through all the training, and on his final pre-flight, I guess it was a pre-flight, he flew his plane out over the Atlantic, out over the Pacific, out of California, and never came back. No, this is not war, this is nothing. He just went out and didn't come back. Well, now there's a stone out in the National Cemetery that's got Tom Worcester. It's a date, so and so and so forth. But there's no body there. But the good part about it is that he was the only fellow out of our group that died, was killed in service. Many of us were wounded, but he was the only one who was he was the only one who died in the service, and which is a terrific thing. By the way, another thing. My senior year, I had more than Dutch dialing, and I had more credits you needed 16 credits to graduate. But you had to be in school for the whole time. Then General Mills came out there and asked Pop Lawfridge if he had a couple of guys, you know, who could be excused, who could come to work a half a day, 5 days a week for General Mills. And Pop Lawfridge said, well, let me go through the records. So I went through the records, and he picked me, and he picked Dutch Dowling. And Dutch Dowling was a really nice young man, and he probably picked me because I was a troublemaker. And not really, but might have been. But anyway, he picked us, and we went down to the General Mills, and they signed us up, and we were put on the payroll, and we would come to school in the morning, and we had to take 3 classes in the morning, and then we were finished, and then we would check out and go down to the General Mills, and then they had an old pickup truck, and Dutch and I would drive that pickup truck all over Timbuktu looking for junk. We were looking for metal pipe, we were looking for sheet metal, we were looking for cable, we were looking for just anything that would work within industry. General Mills they were just putting the special commodities plant together, and they wanted that stuff. And so when we found it, we went to a lot of junkyards, and then we wound up going to farmhouses, and there was a lot of farms. You'd be amazed at how much junk material they have laying around, and they were glad to get rid of it, especially if they're going to get money for it. And so that happened, and then when we graduated, right after graduation, when we were all headed for the service, General Mills gave us a certification that we were #1 and #2 on the seniority list for that plant, and that they gave us a going away box that had cards and stuff in it and that sort of thing. And then it was just a really a good experience for me in the first place. You wound up realizing that you were a part of a bigger thing, that you were a part of something that was really needing to be taken care of. And anyway, when we came back, we both went down, and Dutch and I, and Dutch had gone to the Army, and he was I can use these guys' names because they're dead, okay? And Dutch was had died now, and anyway, Dutch had driven a big truck when he was in the Army. He was in the infantry, and he became a truck driver, and that's what he liked to do, and that's what he wanted to do. And he was there maybe a week or 10 days, and he said to Vern Waters, the boss, said, "Hey, we're quitting. I'm leaving." He said, "I'm gonna get a truck driving job," which he did, and he spent his whole lifetime, I guess, driving a semi, which was great. And I did the same thing, only I said, "Hey, this is not for me." I said, "I got a GI Bill, and I'm going to go to college, and I'm going to do something." And I did. I went to college, and I took pre-law, and I intended to have pre-law because I intended to be a lawyer. Except that I met this sweet young thing in Nauvoo, and we got married. And I was a sophomore in college, and by the time I was a junior, I had 3 children. And I said, "Well, I don't think law is for me." So I went to my advisor, and he said, "Well, you can teach political science, social studies if you are interested in teaching." And I said, "I'm interested in anything that brings money in." And consequently, that what I did, and I spent 32 years in education, retired, took early retirement, came back in the mental health center in Carthage, called me and said, Dave, you know, we need somebody to take over this mental health center and operate it for at least 60 days till we do a job search. And I said, well, I'll do that. And I did. And after 2 months, why, they were going to do it 90 days. But after 2 months, why, they said, we finished our job search, Dave. You're it. So I was there for 20 years. So I finally retired at 75, and you know, none of my boys are interested in that. They don't think retiring at 75 is a big deal. And I'm not sure that my daughter thinks that retiring at 75 is a big deal. But I felt like that it was a big deal, and mental health center fit me better than did education. I don't know why that was, but it did. But anyway, I've just rambled here, and I'm not sure what you got people expected from me, but I hope I gave you something. The school system was one of Kathy.
What kind of proms? I wanted to know what did you do at your proms? I mean, where were they held? Were they decorated or?
Yeah, well, the proms were held in the gym.
In
The proms
high
were held
school?
in the gym, and we decorated the gym. And we would go and,
The pit,
huh?
the pit, Jim?
Yeah,
No, the wasn't the pit.
well, they call it the pit.
They called it the pit at the Keokuk,
Yeah.
the old
The-
gym.
The basketball.
Basketball
sure,
court,
yes.
they called that the pit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They-
Well, I'd never heard that term.
That's a new term for it.
Was it?
Yeah, it's after my time.
The
Okay.
pit. Sorry.
But you had to walk down into the gym.
Yes,
I
right.
see.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
In front.
of course back then, good, you know, I remember Miss Nan Collis. Love you, Miss Nan Collis. Miss Nan Collis would come down and she'd tap me on the shoulder and say, David, you're dancing too close to her. And I'd say, okay. And that wasn't just me, you know, I had, I got along fine with all the teachers. I know that I got expelled twice in one day from my favorite teacher. I don't know whether anyone knows Josephine Simmons or not, but Josephine was college comp, and she did a great job. This was my junior year, and 4 or 5 of us decided to go out to Rand Park and play tennis. Well, Pop Loffridge, his biology teacher was ill, so he decided to take the biology class, and he could get somebody for the afternoon group, but not the morning group. So he took them for a walk out to Rand Park, and they was going to do a little nature hike. And when they got out there, they walked right by the tennis court, and Bob looked over there and said, hey, those are 5 guys of mine. And she comes over and said, you go back to your back to school and I'll wait for me. So anyway, we did, and Pop Loffridge came in and he says, Mary, do you remember Mary Davis? She was a lovely lady, and she was the secretary. Just type up 4 or 5 letters, and she typed up the 5 letters, and everything went well. And he said, now you're expelled, and your folks will have to bring you back tomorrow. Okay. So anyway, we were walking down the hall, and we were rowdy. Now, I don't know whether some of these terms, get to you, but this is the first time I'd ever heard this. Why, Josephine stepped out of her room, and she says, Mr. Knowles. And I knew that was stop. So I stopped, and she says, you people are it's a cacophony out here. And I said, what? And she says, it's a cacophony. And I said, hey, I said, Mrs. Sim, you can't do anything to me because I've been expelled. I can't. She takes me back to the office, and Pop Lawbridge, I walks in and he goes, and she said, this is what Mr. Knowles has said, that I can't do anything about this. And Pop says, well, you have. He says, Mary, type up another letter. Well, she typed another letter and he signed it and gave it to me, so I went home with 2 letters. And this was about 10:30, 11. 11 o'clock I got home with the 2 letters, and my father said, hey, what's up? I told him I'd been expelled and I couldn't go back until tomorrow morning. He said, that's ridiculous. He says, get in the car. So I got in the car, out of school we went, and Pop Walker says, I haven't had my lunch yet, Dave. Now, my dad was Dave too, Dave. And he says, neither have I. But he says, there's no sense in this kid laying around the house when he could be here. He said, I'm bringing him back. And he said, I want him, whatever you want to deal out to him, you deal it out. But I'm not gonna let him. Pop Walker says, okay, what's your class? And I said, such and such, so and so. Okay, he says, Mary, give me an admit. So I went back to my class. I didn't have any lunch, but Bob Lawford's got lunch that day, and my dad got lunch that day. I didn't get any lunch, I'll tell you that. So, and the other guys didn't get to come back. They went out to the park and played tennis. What they did, they didn't take the letters home until that evening. Okay, I didn't talk about the Depression. Surely you read about the Depression, you know about the Depression. But when we went to school, we went to high school, as freshmen, we were either just in the depth of the Depression or we were just coming out of it. Mm-hmm. And my family was like every other family. We had brothers, no jobs, and we had sisters, no jobs, and we had uncles, no jobs, and aunts, no jobs. And my father was lucky enough he had a job all through the Depression. But we also had all of these people that came to live. I would wake up in the morning and I didn't know who was sleeping with me. But you know, when I went to bed that night, I was by myself. It's one of those situations where you don't realize, you know, just how desperate everybody was during the Depression. And I don't think we did either as 9th graders and 10th graders. We realized just how difficult it was. Mm-hmm. But when I look back on it, why, I just can't remember ever having dinner with just my mother and dad and 2 sisters. We always had somebody eating with him, somebody there, and not always the same people, but then they just come in. So the Depression, was a pretty serious thing, and if you studied your history and that sort of thing, why, it was a pretty serious thing. And but I think that the Depression affected us in as much as we realized all of a sudden that nothing was sacred. You know, you've got a job today, tomorrow you may not have one. And it's just the way it went. And so I guess any questions?
What kind of classes did you take?
I took college comp, and I took algebra, and I took physics, and I took chemistry, and I took all of that stuff. And I had Jack Horniss for a partner, and I did all the work, and he got all the credit. But then I didn't take any shop, which I should have. A lot of the guys, you know, they took shop and they learned to wire and to be carpenters and that sort of thing. And I didn't. I just had aspirations to be
A lawyer.
somebody that I probably wasn't going to be, but that's the way that was. And a lot of them did the same thing. I mean, you know, we got, I don't know, but those are the classes that I took. They were difficult, and but most classes.
Who's the toughest teacher? Who was the toughest teacher?
I didn't have a tough teacher. I'll tell you, I don't know whether Bernice Phillips is still alive or not, but I'm going to talk about her. Okay. She sat right behind me in bookkeeping, and Bernice would, you know, she was just sharp as a tack, and we get the assignments, and then, you know, and she'd do, you know, and she'd have her homework done, you know, and then fold it up. And I'd take my sheets out, hand it back to her. and the next day, when Dr. Gill, you remember Mr. Gill? And Mr. Gill was, and he would say, Mr. Knowles, I don't understand, would be the next day. I don't understand. He said, you do so well on your daily work, and then these tests, he says, they're atrocious. And I said, well, it bothers me too, you know. So anyway, I said, you've got to, you really, you know, realize that I know this stuff, or I couldn't do it on my, you know. And of course, you know, Bob Lower's no dummy. And, but anyway, it's always nice to have friends.
That know the answers.
Any other questions? I hope I haven't bored you. I think that.
No. Okay, wait. How long was your school day? When did you go in the morning? When did you get out? Day. How many
Day.
hours? Yeah.
Probably. Well, most of us got there about 8 o'clock, and then we, you know, pick on the freshmen or pick on the sophomores or something. And then we go to football practice or basketball practice, and so our day was long.
What kind of food did you eat? Did
What?
they feed you?
No.
You had to have your own lunch?
Yeah, we'd go over to Kiesling's and buy a sandwich or something, but no hot lunch. Now during the Depression, my mother and other mothers would go to school, and they would make hot lunch. They would make beans and cornbread and something else, noodles and something, and they would serve certain kids. And I would say, you know, those kids, I had to go home, and my dad would cook something, and I never cared for it, but I had to go home and then eat, and then rush back to school, and it would just about take her over 45 minutes or an hour. And but then mother would feed these kids, and then once a week, these women would take clothes, and they would wash them, and have these clothes washed and clean, and then they would take the dirty clothes, and in the Wells Carey there was a bathroom, and the kids would go in and take a bath. They put their clean clothes on.
Oh my.
And that was, you know, that was back in the 30s, and you just think about that, and it was, and I would say, you know, Mom, why can't I? And she said, because you can't. That's why. Well, it's none of your business who comes down there and eats, and it's none of your business who gets their clothes changed. It's none of your business. You need to go home, and that's the way it is, and that's the way it was. Yes.
Until the new high school was built, it was open. You had to go home for lunch. You did not get to eat there unless you came from the country. You had to go home for lunch, School was dismissed for everybody to go home for lunch until the new high school was built. Then they started having it closed.
That wasn't that way, because I went over to my Aunt Dorothy, Uncle Louie's wife, and she would always have soup or something for us, and she was pretty close. And we'd go over there. We were in high school, but you know it was I don't know, one of those things that I didn't like some food that was given there when they had the hot lunch at the high school. And anyway, I was almost in trouble.
Yeah.
I wasn't yet. Irene McNeed, you remember Irene McNeed? Does anybody remember her? Home ec teacher? Man, the girls made that plum, whatever it was. It was plum good. And they would come out of class and they'd have that stuff, and the boys would be rather to eat it. And Irene said, "Now come on, Dave, you're going to get in trouble to keep this up. Now I want you to bring your peanut butter sandwich or whatever it is, come on down to my room for lunch." I said, "Okay." And I did. And so, you know, and I had people bail me out that helped me until she married Brewster Evans, and I just lost all faith in her. Brewster was my basketball coach, and yeah. Gentleman back here has a
Yeah,
question.
so summers during high school, did you work on, do farm work, or did you have a part-time job in the summer?
Yes, yes. Well, we didn't have part-time jobs because there wasn't any. In the summertime, I went out and caddied, and you know, you'd carry a double. That's 2 bags, and you'd get 50 cents. Now, if you and then if you lose a golf ball, then you know, I had one guy from Canton that came up there, and if I lose a golf ball, he'd say, "You're only going to get a quarter because you lost one of my golf balls." And I said, "I can't help it if you hit that ball clear down there in the timber." And well, that's too bad, you know, because you know. And but then we cut grass. I cut Billy Timmerman's grass, and anything that I could get done. I do. I tell you what, we used to sleep outside in the summertime, and we listened for the. You remember when the dam would blow the whistle, and because a boat was coming through, we'd get on our bicycles and we'd go down there with a gunny sack. And this was the middle of the night. I mean, couldn't do that today, but we'd go down in the middle of the night, and they had this gate in the north side of the thing would go down, and when it would come up, it was slatted, but when it would come up, it would have fish that was too big to go through the slats. And we'd run out there on the gates and we'd grab those fish and put them in the gunny sack, and then we'd take the gunny sack and down, and we'd tie a rope around it, put it in the water so the fish didn't die, and the next morning we'd take the fish down to Howard's boat dock and sell him the fish. And we anything for a buck back in those days. Any other questions?
The country club where it is now?
The country club is where it is now, and the kids whose folks belong to the country club could swim in the pool. Those of us who didn't either had to go to Sandusky and swim in the ice house, or else in the quarry there at where McManus lives now. There's a quarry there. We used to swim there.
Fabulous.
Thanks.
Pardon?
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Again.
Well, listen, you know.
And we can look at the pictures?
Yeah. Before you get too excited though, June 10th is our next special, and it's Terry Altide talking about notable Keokuk women.
Oh, yeah.
And Terry's always real interesting too.
June
May I?
10th.
10th.
You may.
I got a couple of quotes here. Life is like a river. It carries you into the future, whether you go wish to or not.
That's right.
The closer you get to where you began, the closer you are to where you belong. I thought those were pretty good quotes, and I'm almost back where I belong when I get to Keokuk. I just I only spent actually 18 years here. When I went to the service, then I came back and I worked for a while, living there at the house. But then Margaret Ann and I got together and decided that, you know, she's going to put me through college, and she didn't. My hair is white and I'm almost blind. Me. The days of my youth are far behind. My neck so stiff can't turn my head, can't bear half that's being said. My legs are wobbly, can hardly walk, but glory me, I can surely talk. And this is the message I want you to get. I'm still a kicking, and I ain't dead yet. The joints are stiff, won't move in their sockets, and nary a dime is left in my pockets. So maybe you think I'm a total wreck. To tell the truth, I look like heck. But still I just loads of fun, and my heart with joy is overrun. Lots of friends so kind and sweet, and many more I never meet. Oh, this is a wonderful world of ours, shade and sunshine and beautiful flowers. So you just take it from me, you bet. I'm glad I'm living, and I ain't dead yet. I've got corns on my feet and ingrown nails, and do they hurt? Care language fails. To tell you my troubles, it takes too long. If I tried, you would give me the gong. Anybody remember the old gong? Okay. I go to church and Sunday school too, for I love the story that is ever new. And when I reach the end of my road, I know to my heavenly home I'll go. But then when I leave my house of clay, if you listen closely, I'll have to say, well, folks, I've left you, but don't forget it. I've just passed on. I ain't dead yet. Now that was in the class of 55. Now I'm not sure who penned that. Somebody. Class reunion. It was my class reunion, and all through the house, I checked in each mirror and begged my poor spouse to say I looked great, that my chin wasn't double, and he lied through false teeth just to stay out of trouble. She said that beneath my thick glasses my eyes hadn't changed, and I had the same figure, it was just a mite rearranged. He said my skin was still silky, although looser and draped. Not so much like smooth satin, but more like silk crepe. I swallowed his words hook, line, and sinker, and entered the banquet feeling just fine. Somehow I expected my classmates to stay as young as they were on that long ago day. Well, hug farewell hugs. Just like me through the years, they'd added gray to their hair or pounds to their rears. But as we shared a few memories and untold some class jokes, we were 18 in spirit, though we looked like our folks. We turned up hearing aid volumes and dimmed down the light, rolled back the years, and we're young for the night.
Yay.